Hello, everybody. Very excited to be here today with Maureen Pound from Global Teams. And we're going to be discussing how to build workplace culture with outsourced staff. And more importantly, what are the biggest mistakes? So Maureen, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and let us know a bit about you.
Well, hello, everybody. I run a business called Global Teams, and we support business owners who are feeling quite overwhelmed with all the stuff that you have to do in small business. And we have a team in the Philippines who helps them. Another thing, I'm youngest of 9 children. And another thing about me is I've been a good leader in the past, but I've also been pretty crap on occasion as well. Thanks, Laura.
I think we've all been there for sure. I can absolutely say that I have learned some hard lessons. And I guess I'd love for you to just explain a little bit how you got into this, because it's not so straightforward. It's not as if you woke up one morning and are like, I'm going to do this. So let us know all about it.
Yes. Well, I was a business coach for 20 years. And I supported, hundreds of business owners, and it was a great life. Went into business with the amazing Carmen Williams, who's a scientist, and I'm a creative, and so we're a really interesting team. And we started helping lots of businesses, and we needed help ourselves with admin and putting ourselves out on LinkedIn, etc. And so we started to gather together this small team of awesome virtual assistants in the Philippines. And then one of our clients, who we were helping with coaching and helping her with her LinkedIn marketing, she said, I want someone like you've got. And, can you get me somebody? And we're going, oh, no, look, it's not our core business. And then the next day she goes, no, have a look for me. And we go, okay. So we did. And then another client got wind of it and they said, oh, could you get us someone too? 82 VAs later.
Wow, 82. Well, that's awesome. And I guess, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you made, and then how you've seen other business owners, maybe perhaps tread the path that you did as well, and how they can come back from it?
Sure. So one of the biggest mistakes I made, there's so many, was when I was a solo business person and I knew I needed help. I was using Infusionsoft, or Keep, which is a sales and marketing software, and I wanted an expert to help me. And there were 2 key things I did wrong with this experience. Was I got someone who is an expert in Keep, a VA from the Philippines, and he was great. But what I didn't do was own the strategy. Like, he knew how to use the tool, but, I didn't really have clearly in my mind the idea of what the sales funnel actually was. What were the steps that potential clients were going to take before they booked in a meeting with me? So that was one mistake. And the other mistake with that particular experience was that I did the opposite of micromanaged. I said, here you go. And then I just, flitted and did my thing. And then I didn't come back enough, especially at the beginning of the relationship, to check in, because, I should have really been checking in every day, especially at the start.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think does that come down to people's personality and work types, or is it very much just not understanding what's actually required to work with outsourced staff?
Laura, I think it's a bit of both. And I also think we need to change our view of outsourcing anyway, or outsourced staff, because especially since COVID, it's no longer that you can turn to Gary sitting next to you and say, hey, Gaz, how do we, do this? So it's really, you're often working with people remotely. And so it's very much about, your style. So I'm not very structured. I'm a creative person. So yes, my leadership style came into play. But also just not setting up the right structure for it to work from the beginning.
Okay, yeah, because I have to say that's definitely something that I've struggled with as well. And I have put systems in place that I thought would be the answers. And yet, I haven't made myself available, or I'm frustrated by the fact that the person just doesn't know what to do. So what would be your tips around that?
Yeah, sure. So, so number one question is, do you know what to do? Do you, and not even do you know what to do? Do you know what the outcome is that you want from whatever they're going to be doing?
Definitely know the outcome. The steps
Okay,
in
great.
between depends.
Yeah. So if you're clear on the outcome, then the business owner needs to make clear that the outcome that the person needs to fulfill with what they're doing. And then in the beginning, just give them a step-by-step process of how you would do it. So it's that really starting slowly and building. So just say, Laura, you wanted to do something like you wanted them to post on social media for you or edit some great content. And it sounds pretty straightforward, but you've got so much genius in your brain around how you actually want it done. What does posting on social media actually mean? Because it means so many different things to different people. How do you want it? What sort of content? What's the system around it? So I would say be really clear what the system is. Be really clear on the steps in the beginning, and as a person gets to know you and grow, then they'll get better and better at it. But I think that's the key. And the other part to that is often when people start, they go, "Oh, could you do some social media marketing for me? And can you check my email?" And it's too much at once. So really start slow and build.
Okay, and so I've got some rebuttals or thoughts that I've heard from a number of different business owners, and have also admittedly been there myself. Is that sounds really time consuming? Is that the case?
Yeah. It is time consuming in the beginning. That's why people don't do it, because it's all too hard in the beginning.
Okay, so how long does that last for? Sorry.
So what you can do, if you then decide, they're not going to do social media marketing. In fact, they're going to do LinkedIn. In fact, not even LinkedIn. They're going to, I'm going to share my target market on LinkedIn. I'm going to get them to connect with everyone in the target market on LinkedIn, 50 people a day. Okay. So it's almost like you start with a process in itself. Then you might say, when they get really good at it and you've fine-tuned it, could you please create a process for this? And then they're creating processes for the business along the way, and you would help them. So in answer to your question, I'm not going to go, oh yes, no, it's so easy. Yes, it is time consuming, and that's why people avoid doing it.
But that's actually really refreshing, because the amount of people that I, hear have outsourced and successfully, according to them, and then they're like, oh, it really wasn't that hard. When in actual fact, what I have seen from working with smaller businesses in particular is that they leave it too long to hire someone. And so therefore the time constraints on them are even harsher than what they would be if they'd done it sooner. And that it does take time, but how would you treat any other staff member?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. You're spot on that people hire when they're desperate, and that's not really good headspace to be in. And then also when you hire, if you did hire Gaz, sitting next to you, how much time would you spend with him in the first 2 weeks? Like seriously, a new hire you would spend a lot of time with. So for instance, and if people do already have, because some people hire virtual assistants in the Philippines or other help when they've already got some staff in Australia, and that can work really well. At the moment, we've just hired a new staff member in Australia who is shadowing somebody else. So we actually don't expect much output in the first couple of weeks, because you just wouldn't when someone starts. And yet people, when they're desperate, it's like, oh, I need help, I need this website up. Then they don't have the time, they don't have the headspace, and then it fails, and then they blame the person.
Yeah, and there's quite a good connection here when it comes to earning money and retaining profits. And I'll explain that connection is that same thought process of I need it now, it needs to happen yesterday, and then when you have a launch that fails or you don't get the money that you want, you blame the person, the system, the whatever it is. And so I think if we can connect the two and see how aligned this is, that it might actually shift some of that mindset. And I totally agree with you, Maureen. I have teams here, and even if it doesn't really matter where you're hiring them from, but the shadowing really works. And one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen is that they dump stuff on a person and expect a unicorn. What have you got to say about that?
Yes. The dumping's a really interesting one. We always want things off our plate and on somebody else's. So, all those, I feel like I'm a kid. There's veggies on the plate. I don't want them. I want to sneak them onto someone else's plate and I never want to see them again. So sometimes they're not dumped very well, which is part of the problem. So you're dumping this huge problem rather than, there's no structure around it or steps. Mm-hmm. In saying that, we've got somebody who manages our whole Facebook marketing, but he's been with us for a long time, and he's built up to that. So, it can happen eventually. But also the unicorn, I think this is a really interesting one. A virtual assistant is just a staff member. So the way I like to get my head around it is to give the person a title. So if I was hiring in Australia, am I hiring a social media marketing person? Am I hiring a web developer? Am I hiring a graphic designer, a video editor? Whatever it is, you'd give them a title. Mm-hmm. And they would have expectations. They probably have a job description around what their role is. And I'm not saying to necessarily put a job description together, a bit archaic, but if often people want a unicorn because they want all those things put together into the one person, and some things you just shit at. I am not good, at learning new software. I can get my head into it, but it would take me 10 times longer than anyone else.
Yeah, and I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. I also found that for me, it was my lack of understanding around what something meant. So the example I'll use is marketing. Marketing's this really broad, I guess, umbrella in business, and it's very easy to go, I need a marketing person or a marketing assistant or whatever, and then where does that line stop and start? And I think that was definitely something that I see happen over and over and over again. And so what would your recommendation be for people who are like, well, there's this big thing that I need, where do I start?
Yeah. So what we usually do with people is have like an extensive hour-long conversation and try and nut out, because there's two things here as well. There's what do you need right here for this big rock that's right in front of you. You're releasing your book. You need, need publicity for it or whatever it is. And then it's who do you need in the future? Mm. So it's that balancing act to work out what a particular person can do. If they can do 80% of what you want done, then you're on a good thing. But you have to work out what the 80% is. So my advice to be more succinct is to really scope what are the most important things that you think you would be continually handing over now and into the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point. What I see happen there as I guess a difficulty that people say is, well, where do I start? Or if I don't know exactly how to nut that out, or they avoid it, is like, for example, if someone asked me, I would say, have you actually dedicated the time? Are you speaking to the right people? And I think there's so much fear around this that there's just paralyzation. So what could a person do to get started around this so that it doesn't feel like this really big, massive thing that they're just like, oh, how long is a piece of string?
Yeah. So there's two ways I think is you can get the help of an expert like us. If you're doing it on your own, what I would do is sit down and think about what's on your plate at the moment. What is it there in your business that you do repetitively? And should you be doing that? Are you the best person in your business to be doing that thing?
Yeah, that's so true.
So if you just think, like, let's get into some examples. So I today I had your thing in my calendar, but I wasn't sure of some details around it. So I have a personal assistant, Jonathan. I said, can you track down the email, make sure I've got the link, and confirm the time for me? So I just did that this morning, and I asked him to do a few more things. So I didn't have to check my email. I haven't checked my email. I didn't check it until 11 o'clock or something. Whereas most people get up in the morning and they do it first thing and then get caught up in everything. So that's just an example of a key thing that doesn't sound like it's much work for you to trawl through your email and organise it all, but it does, because you have to multi-switch all the time. So it's really thinking of those things. All these people out there, I'm sure people who work with you, Laura, who might always know that they need to do more social media marketing and do it really sporadically.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
And there's no system to it. And then they're wasting their time. Or like me, sometimes I create content and never gets up because I used to not be able to organise it or edit it, or it was all too hard. I didn't finish things. So that's what I do. If you're confused about where to start, sit down and think of those things that are easy to that would be pretty easy to hand over to someone else, things that you're repetitively doing that are taking away from you working strategically in your business.
Yeah, and I think that's key, is that we get bogged down in the rabbit holes rather than looking at like the strategy, the vision, what is the big picture for us in our business. The next biggest question I get is, okay, so you've hired someone, it's going well. How can you create a culture within your business if you've got, people that are outsourced, in another country as well as within your country and that sort of thing? How can it be inclusive and what can be done there?
This is, I love this space. Because people are people and we want to all belong to the tribe. We want to be appreciated. And it's so much. People, number one, have a real fear around money, that, staff are always going to ask for more money. You deal with your kids asking for stuff. You deal in your life with people asking. Sometimes you can say yes and sometimes you can say no. So I think you put that aside. But there's, create that sense of community. And a good way to do that is to have that 5-minute catch up every day, especially in the beginning. When I speak to my accounts person every Monday morning, I'll always ask how her weekend was. And it sounds like the simplest thing, but people often don't show an interest in the person. And I love just having a little chat around what's going on, and you learn stuff. And she told me yesterday her husband's just started a new business, and it's really interesting, and we build that connection. Another thing we do is we have a team meeting every second Friday with our immediate team, and then the alternate Fridays we have with the larger team. But last Friday, Carmen and I came up with this idea where we said, the point of this meeting is not for announcements. We've got tools to give announcements. It's about connection. So we said, I want you to get into teams of 2 and you run the meeting for half an hour, so whoever's turn it is. And then they came up with ideas of what to do. And I said, you can play a game, you can do whatever, all over Zoom. So last week, on Friday, the 2 people who organised it had us, we all had to sing a line from a song without laughing. It sounds ridiculous, but it's a bit of fun. They're the ones organising the Christmas party. We are having a Christmas party, which even if you've got staff in Australia and you're remote, I still think you should have some sort of Christmas party, even if it's virtual. We do things like if they want time off, they just, apply. Like, it's a little things that you can do. There is the great resignation happening at the moment as well because of COVID, where people are just saying, no, I'm not putting up with, less than good conditions. And they've done a lot of research around it. And it is, people want lifestyle and they want connection. So if you can provide those things, then it works really well.
Yeah, and I think that's absolute key, especially if you've gone from in-person to remote. It feels like it's a whole other world when in actual fact, so I have remote teams all around Australia and that sort of thing, and it's definitely a mindset that I came across where it's like it's different, but it's actually not. And it's really interesting and actually quite fun, I found, to be able to just come up with different ways to do things, and like the little milestones, like, a birthday's coming up, or they've been with you for the year, or, they've said something in a previous conversation, and then you can, bring it up in a different way, and all of that, which you would do if you were in an office environment anyway. And then
Yeah, I
there's
love
like this
the birthday
disconnect.
one. The
Yeah.
birthday one, Sheila, who's over in the Philippines, part of the team, she organised the birthday cake. And they take a photo of themselves with the cake. It's just a little thing. If you can't do it in person, you can do it online.
They can still celebrate. Absolutely. Yeah. That's so interesting. And I think there's such a big thought process around culture when in actual fact, as you've just said, bringing it back to connection and community, you can't really go wrong. If someone was scared of what that might look like, what would your recommendation be?
My recommendation is 2 words: be kind.
Mm, yeah.
So, just say you might not have a big team, you mightn't be able to afford to give them a birthday cake or whatever it is, but be really kind. And what can you do? What can you do? You can let them feel connected, let them feel heard, because people want to contribute and they want to learn and grow in the workplace as well. So you can do those things that aren't too overwhelming. Give people some autonomy, some choice. So yes, I want a spreadsheet, but it's up to you how you put it together.
Love that.
What do you think? And you're actually asking for their feedback instead of being a dictator. So I think all those things are really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you've just said then, where you've said you want a spreadsheet, but there is the freedom of, expression and how they get to that outcome, which I think a lot of the time where there's so many different, ways of getting to the same outcome, and we know our way and we think that's how it's going to be done. When you actually let that go, that person feels completely involved and takes responsibility and feels like they're totally part of the team. So I thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah. I think you're. I totally agree. And a lot of people don't do it. Sometimes we get clients where we just go, we don't think we're a good fit. Your behaviour's mean.
Yeah.
There's
not
no
acceptable.
Trust there. There's no trust as well. So you can do really small things that have a big impact.
Yeah, no, I love that. So to recap on everything that we've said today, the biggest mistakes we've seen are that people dump and don't think about the first step or the steps involved in that. The idea of the unicorn, which I absolutely loved your take on that. And, the culture is not as scary as what we're led to believe when you can just be kind. I'm a true believer, and Profit First Professionals Australia and New Zealand, we totally believe that if you are feeling stuck, then you should get an expert and a professional to help you. So how could people get in contact with you, Maureen, or be able to get some more information, to get the help so that they can start growing their teams?
Yep, sure. So if you want to go to globalteams.com.au, there's lots of resources there. I've written a book called What a VA Can Do for You. And I thought I'll do a 10-pager. No, it started being a 2-pager. Anyway, I think it's a 30 or 40-pager anyway. But it's quite well structured. It's broken up into various pieces. So if you go to the website, I reckon download that before talking to us. Awesome. Because then because it might not be right for you right now. You just might need to get someone from Fiverr to finish off this thing that you're doing right now, rather than getting a full-time or a part-time staff member. But if you go, I'm ready, especially for 2022. I've unleashed the beast, I'm ready to go for it, you can also go onto the website and book in a time with Carmen, and that'll go straight into her diary. You can have a chat. And I say with her, because she's better at it than me. So be thinking about who's better in the business. I hate all the minutiae of the detail and, that sort of stuff. I'm the big thinker, creative person. So, so she can have a chat, and the first chat's about 15 minutes, and just go, and she'll probably 50% of the time she'll sort of just point you in another direction, and then sometimes we might be a good fit, and we take it from there.
Fantastic. We do have a question in the comments. 2 people in business, one naturally social, other introverted. This is quite a contrast. Any suggestions in this context?
I am a big believer in being yourself and giving people the space to be that. So I don't expect Carmen to be outgoing and extroverted. What we do though is what Carmen likes is she likes formulas. So so that doesn't mean that she can never be in a social situation, even though she doesn't particularly like it. But she'll just go, how do I do this? And then I'll say, well, step 1, step 2, step 2, and then she just turns it into a little formula. So I think it's celebrate your strengths, because together you can create amazing stuff. But also sometimes you've got to bend a little bit. And find ways of working together really well. And I think some formulas and guidelines are a good idea.
Beautiful. And that's so true. And thank you so much for answering that question. We have put in the comments the link to the Global Teams website, as well as the where you can get the book, Maureen's book, about what a VA can do for you. And yeah, I could continue this conversation forever. But I understand that you're a busy woman, and so I'd like to say thank you so much for spending some time with us. And I can see we've got a number of different comments where people have said that it's very, very helpful. So thank you so much. I know this is always a conversation that's going on in business, and just hearing the realities and how we can make this work is so helpful. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura. It was fun.
Awesome. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.